was, as I said to you the other day, I was doing a bit of bookmaking myself, Gary, on the weekend, and I wanted to have a look at the lines of how many games each team should win.
AFL.
And I just want to chuck a couple at you if I can.
Let's go.
So I've set the line for North Melbourne at 4.5. Did North Melbourne win 5 games this year? Would you go under or over?
Over.
Over 5.
We've got set it at 4.5.
Yeah.
I'm going over the line, so 5 or more.
You think they're going to win 5 or more? I see. I'd be under that. West Coast 7.5.
Under. Massive disappointment, West Coast, for mine.
2 games last year, but
no sizzle. Where's the improvement apart from Oscar Allen, who's going to come back and play? Where have you got them?
Well, if they don't win 8 games next year, I mean that's a big story, I think.
Well, they finished second last.
Yeah, I understand that, but they're the West Coast Eagles. They play 11 games in Perth or 12 games in Perth. But I would be under as well, but I think it would be a big story if they go under that line.
Port Adelaide, I'll give you one, 12.5.
I had 12.5 too. I'd go over.
Oh, I tell you what, they're bullish over there in Adelaide on Port. There's this, as I said, it seems to me there's a rite of passage for Port that they're going to come screaming back into the top 4 and probably win the flag.
St Kilda won 11 last year. I've got the line at 10.5 again.
I'll go under. I think they're going to go back a bit before potentially they could go forward.
Just the other one, there's a lot we could go through, but I had Carlton's line at 14.5.
Yeah, I was going to say 13.5. They should be winning 14 plus games.
Yeah. Well, Fremantle won 15 games last year. Carlton should be replicating what the Dockers have done. You can have your say on that. 1300 736 736 lines are available if you want to have your say on that or any other topic.
Matt's in Craigieburn. Go, Matty.
Hey guys, Gary, good luck for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Matty.
Christmas, Happy New Year.
You too, mate.
Wanted to reach out a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately I haven't been able to get through. But your Golden Awards that you do for the trade period, I reckon you should add one to it, and it's probably one that you can only do retrospectively. And it's the Golden Steak Knives.
Yes.
So who was the steak knives thrown in that ended up doing the best for the team? So you look at retrospectively, Josh Kennedy at West Coast was probably the all-time greatest golden steak knives.
Yeah, I don't reckon I'd have him as a steak knife, Josh Kennedy. I think that was like a legitimate early draft pick that you had to be strong if you wanted to get Judd back. There, we know who the steak knife is. He's probably need to change his name by default, Jack Crisp, given what he's been able to do. But and he gets a bit, I don't know if he gets narky about it, but he's gone way, way beyond that. He's the legitimate star of the competition. Good thought, Matty. I'll put that onto the trade radio boys. That's their wheelhouse. They should
being a new footy manager or general manager of football, there'd be a feather in my cap if Lockie stayed at the footy club.
That's the origins of the Golden Feather. Are you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
That's Peter Bell in his first trade period as the footy manager of Freo came out and said, if we keep him, it'll be a feather in my cap. That's the origins of the Golden Feather.
Yeah, well, no club talks more rubbish in the trade period than Fremantle. Like that Wolsey said when under
that's categorically wrong.
Yeah, that's Longmuir. But Wolsey's their list guy, and he said we're not trading Rory Lobb under any circumstance. They said the same with others over the journey. So they talk absolute rubbish.
Okay, so when you're back late November, who will be the CEO of the AFL steering these all-important questions?
I've got no line of sight. I think Gill will still be there at that stage, late November. Yeah. I do. I think he'll probably depart sometime early next year. And one of the internal gurus that have been privy to all these negotiations, Andrew Dillon, probably is the favourite. Clearly, what's your thought?
I don't know either. I've got no idea. They'll find someone, and away they go. There's a few jobs. Essendon are looking for a CEO. Will Greg Swan be the Essendon CEO by the time you get back from your holiday?
Is that what you're hearing?
I think he's been heavily chased and courted.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They said in their release to the members the other day on the back of that review, which was a disaster, that they'd like to have that done in a couple of weeks. So yeah, I think they'll have a CEO. I don't know if it'll be Greg Swan, but someone in the next couple of weeks.
We're talking about captains. We think change is afoot, so let's work through a few. Right? West Coast, Shuey, 17 games this year, 7 last year. Are you going with him again?
I think I probably would go with Shuey again. There isn't an obvious replacement, I don't think, for him.
No, I just had a look at that. So Barras, would he? I don't know Barras at all. McGovern,
No.
Gaff, Sheed, none of those sort of jump off the page, so he probably goes again. Jack Zeeble, the Kangaroos, has been a good warrior for a while. I think it's time for change.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not sure he's in their best team if all things go to plan next year. And Jai Simpkin, for me, would be the obvious one, albeit if you wanted to go with someone more senior. Luke McDonald's a pretty good leader.
I think I'm leaning towards Jai Simpkin as well. McAvoy's retired at Hawthorn. Gunston, Mitchell, O'Meara all gone. I think this is probably almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, Sicily would be the one, just committed for 5 years at the Hawks. He's in the prime of his career and has tempered those, I guess, temper issues that he had for a while there, and he's got a good level head on him now and he plays the right way.
What about Brisbane? The Zork, the magician, who got himself in a bit of strife. At times, I reckon, lets himself down with body language and other things by his own admission, something he's had to work at. Time for him to move on and give someone else a crack?
Yeah, ask Danny Daly about this, their footy manager at Brisbane. They have had the discussion with him, and the fact they've put on the agenda at his exit meeting, I think they would be looking for a change. I'd love to see Lachie Neale do it. Harris Andrews would be the other one, probably, for me, that he's capable. But to be a great player is one thing. To be a really strong leader and drive your team to a premiership would be a great challenge for Lachie Neale.
And these are our observations from obviously outside. If you go way back to the Geelong successful era when Tom Harley was appointed, I'm not sure anyone outside of Geelong were looking at Tom or Nick Maxwell as another one at the Collingwood Footy Club from outside. Probably weren't the obvious, but from an internal perspective, they were clear cut. And there may be one of those that we're missing here, but these are just our observations from the outside. McCluggage could be one of those people at Brisbane. Maybe he's got
eventually
obvious
yeah.
and captaincy and leadership material. What about at the Bombers? I think that's another one. Dyson Heppel, if he hasn't already stood down, I think he will. Where do you think this goes?
Well, we spoke about this earlier on in the week. It's got to be Zach Merritt, and he needs to be better when he doesn't have the football, and I think that's the case for all of his teammates. But if you speak to anyone, you hear anyone, he reportedly sets high standards at the club, so that's what they need, and he's their best player.
Snap. Fremantle. Fife.
Gone. Yeah. And I wonder what the legacy of Nat Fyfe's leadership would be. Like, great player, Hall of Famer, dual Brownlow, all of that. But it has been very much about Nat. And if you ever, and I don't know him, but if you ever read an article that he's done or a feature, it is largely centred on him. And I don't think he's had that outward lens of team, which the great captains have done, like Joel Selwood. So, yeah, the legacy of his captaincy, not as good as it could have been, I don't reckon. And part of that is because of injury and all of that, and you do get a bit insular when you're injured. But, yeah, Brayshaw just plays like a captain.
I think that's almost, of all of the ones we're talking about, Sicily to Hawthorn and Brayshaw at Fremantle would be almost obvious. I've been floating this for a few years, and Scott Pendlebury just keeps defying time.
He's running like a snail.
He may run like a snail, Johnny, but he keeps running like a snail with the ball in his hand. No question about his leadership, clearly. And I just wonder whether the handover whilst he's still there and playing the footy that he is and having the influence that he has could be a good thing. Now, he's defied it. Joel Selwood defied it. You could say the same thing with Joel. And Scott Pendlebury, like Joel Selwood, has earned the right to captain the club up until whenever he decides not to, because his form's still great and he's still having an influence. I think it would be great to see him play alongside one of maybe Darcy Moore, maybe Taylor Adams, or maybe Jack Crisp, and say, right, I'll get you through this first year or two.
Maynard's the other one who I think has leadership capability. I don't see a need for change at Collingwood, but you make the case. Saw how well it worked with Travis Boak, sort of handing it over, and what it did for the latter part of his career. So you can easily make the case for it. But I just think when they're right in the premiership hunt, it would be a fairy tale story like Selwood, and third of the best and fairest, easily their best leader. I just don't see a need for change.
I think that's a very good point. And Selwood has, the way that has finished says to me, of course Scott Pendlebury can do that. And of course, what a beautiful, not saying that he's coming towards the end of his career, but if in the next 2 years he was able to do what Joel did, it'll be a great sort of full stop to a great career.
We don't know about Geelong, and there's candidates they would tell us, but it's not easy. It's impossible to replace Joel Selwood. I think they go Dangerfield.
I'm confident in this one. I'm confident that Tom Stewart will captain Geelong next year. But they've got plethora. Look at them. Dangerfield, Duncan, Hawkins, Guthrie, Cameron. I don't know if Jeremy Cameron needs it. I think Tom Stewart down there, Danger. Of course, Danger could captain them, but I don't know if he needs it at age 31 or 32. Get Tommy in the chair and away he goes.
And the South Australian clubs would be thinking about a change as well. So I doubt whether Rory Sloane will captain the club off the ACL that he's had, and his form's been an issue. Duday would be the obvious choice for me. I think Tom Duday will be the captain of Adelaide next year. And Port Adelaide might think about a change as well. They had dual captains for a season there, which was a disaster, and Ollie Wine's form slipped with that. But he was a young man, and Tom Jonas has done an admirable job. But if they're really serious about making a charge for the premiership, I think you want your Brownlow medalist in and around the football, the way that he plays, the character that he is off the field. I'd probably go with Ollie Wines as well. So, I mean, there's over half the teams that at least will be considering a captaincy change this year.